What is going on, y'all? So let me just give the intro first before I dive into it. I'm so anxious to dive into this. So Making a Walk podcast, as you guys know, we're on YouTube, as you can probably see here, or if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you're listening, definitely like, subscribe, follow on socials, Twitter, Instagram, follow us there as well. But this past weekend was nuts. What we're going to talk about, or what we're going to dig into today, is the aftermath of UFC 287, Adesanya against Pereira. And we're going to talk about current talk. And of course, we're going to talk about UFC Fight Night Holloway versus Allen. Man, if you didn't watch, first of all, before I even jump into that, what we normally do here is, we'll record and then we'll go back and edit and take out the ums and the ahs and the, all that bullshit and try to make it all nice and pretty. But like for this one, I'm just gonna talk straight through it, man, because it was so crazy and I've really kind of been super anxious to talk about it. We're just gonna run right through it. Fuck it. So first things first is the one that's really hot on my mind right now is the Chris Curtis situation. So Chris Curtis versus Kelvin Gastelum, fight of the night, an amazing fight, back and forth. Both men had their moments, but one particular moment that stood out was the headbutt in the second round, and that really changed the optics of the fight for that particular round, or during that particular round. That's what made that very interesting. And so Kelvin walks away with a decision win. And for me personally, I scored the fight 29-28 for Chris Curtis. I thought he won two of those rounds. I think it was round 2 and 3, actually. I had him winning both of those because I looked at the accidental headbutt. I mean, and that wasn't something that the ref caught. And I think that in my mind, I was able to erase that and see what work was done during that fight or during that particular round. And as we know, like we've talked about in previous episodes, the judges should not be getting so much shine. We shouldn't be talking about judges so much, but it is what it is. And so what's happened since then is Chris, understandably, has been upset about it. And he's gone on Twitter, and I've seen a lot of it, and a lot of it is funny. But he's pretty upset, and people are firing at him, and he's firing right on back. People have been remarking on Reddit. I know he did an interview with Helen Yee, so he's been all over the place. And here's the thing. A lot of fans are looking at this like it's a video game. They're looking at this like, okay, you lost, pass the sticks to the next person. But you got to understand, like, this is Chris's livelihood. And yeah, he gets paid, decently, but he puts a lot of work into it. And not only does he have to take the money for himself into his next fight, but he has to pay the people who have helped him get to that fight. So, getting 85 to show, but not getting that 85 win, that's a substantial thing, and that's going to make you angry. I don't care who you are. Getting half of your money that you feel like you rightfully earned is going to piss you off. It would piss me off for sure, especially if it's something that's out of your control, And so, yeah, he's gone everywhere, and kind of fired off his feelings about it, and I get it. Frustration, super frustrated. I think that he's appealed it as well. But if I were him, and I'm not suggesting that he should do this or that. He's his own man. He does his own thing. If I were him, I would act like I won. And I'm going to call out the people who I would have called out initially anyway. He already owns a win over Brendan Allen. So he's got a win in that 11 to 15 range. Let's assume in his mind he won against Kelvin. That's 2 wins in 11 to 15 range. So I'm calling out whoever the fuck is in that range that I want to fight. I mean, why not? Because if you thought that you won the fight, and the UFC has done this in instances where they thought that the person who was announced the winner wasn't really the winner, they rewarded the person that lost on the cards, lost, and gave them the appropriate fight. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it don't, but they were rewarded for what they actually did and what people who really are able to digest the fight actually saw. If I'm Chris, I'm calling out who Imolov, uh, who Roman Dolidze. What is he, 9? I'm calling out all of them, and trying to get a fight there. Because why not? Go get my money. Go get my money back. Go beat them because you deserve to be in that spot, and do what you do. I mean, I know Kelvin's not going to fight you again. Why would he? Especially y'all two were in there. He knows who won and who lost. Of course, he's not going to fight you again. So go ahead and move on and show everybody that you deserve to be in that area. That's what I would do. But I'm not Chris. We'll see what he does next. For Kelvin, he did fight well. That jab was pretty dope. His ability as a shorter fighter to cover distance is remarkable. And you can take that all the way back to what he did against Israel Adesanya a few years ago for the interim championship, and his ability to mask his, what is he, 5'9", his height, and still cover that distance is really remarkable. He's still very quick for the division, and he still didn't even really use what won him the Ultimate Fighter that year was his wrestling. He used a little bit, but not really. So apparently, Kelvin still has some gas in the tank. I thought he was done. I thought that that's why he was away. I thought that maybe he had some injuries that he wasn't able to get past. But apparently, he's doing just fine. And that On a Mission for Gold Twitter tag is still relevant. We'll see what he does. I'm anxious to see who he fights next. If I were him, I would be trying to fight somebody in that 5 to 10 range to try to get up and to that title fight as quickly as possible. He's also called out Izzy, which I think is quite premature. But he does have a storyline, but I don't think they're going to go that storyline route again. They did that already, and they've exhausted that. So the next fight on the card that was relevant to me, interesting to me, not to say that the other weren't relevant, but the one that stood out, another one that stood out was Raul Rosas Jr. against Christian Rodriguez. Now, I will say that I thought that this was the appropriate step up for Raul, and I did pick him to win. I thought that Christian was going to get caught in that mad dash that he does at the beginning of fights and was going to be able to get out of it. But Christian Rodriguez, he showed that he was the more intellectual fighter and ultimately the superior fighter. The fact that he was able to withstand that initial onslaught, and obviously Raul he's young, and he came in and he's got all these people chanting his name, and all that adrenaline was going through. And when he started the fight, I mean, he came out like a man on fire. And that you could see, I told my wife when we were watching it, you can literally see his energy meter going down. And by the time we got to about midpoint of the second round, oh yeah, he was done. He was done. And his heart had him still go out there, which I applaud that. He didn't give up on himself, but his body just couldn't do it. And Christian, being the smart fighter that he is, was able to basically big brother him. He waited until his opportunities came, and then he just started to do what veteran fighters do, and he took his lunch money. So I think that this loss, I think it's cliche to say that losses make people better, but this particular one is going to definitely make him better. I think that if he would have steamrolled his way up the rankings, got into the rankings and got to number 5, 6, something like that, and lost in a main event or something like that, I think that would have been more devastating. Even though that this is probably devastating, he feels that now, but that one would have been more devastating. I think this is a good loss to have right now. So I think that he'll come back better than this. And his striking is very rudimentary. He does have power, That's evident, but he doesn't. He hasn't shown the technical side of setting things up, controlling range, um, setting up a nice kicking game, things like that. He hasn't shown that. So I think that that's his next evolution. And I do think that we're going to see that. He's not the type of fighter, in my opinion, that's going to be like a Sage Northcutt that kind of flames out or just doesn't evolve. I think that he will evolve, and I think that he will end up being a really good fighter. But at this point, he's got the grappling, and the fighters at this level are too smart to just allow you to take one discipline and run them over with it. It's just not going to work that way. So he'll come back stronger. We'll see. Kevin Holland against Santiago Ponzinibbio. This went exactly how I thought that was going to go. Santiago came out throwing a lot of heat, a lot of power, and I think that Holland used his jab and used his length to be able to stay patient and control the distance in the fight. And that's what that 81-inch reach, that's how you're supposed to use it. Even though he gets a lot of flack for being a talker, being somebody who isn't disciplined, but in this fight, and really honestly, even in the Wonder Boy fight, when they were on the feet, you could see the discipline in how he uses his technique. No matter how wild Holland seems or appears outside of the octagon, he's a very technical fighter. And he's very on top of the things that he's supposed to do in there. And that definitely showed in fighting Ponzinibbio. One thing that was super funny about Ponzinibbio was when he got knocked out, he did that Nate Robinson. He had his booty in the air, and anytime you got your booty in there, you out, you done. He tried to protest the stoppage, but no, booty in the air means you done. So that was it for him. Holland still not ranked, super popular, but still not ranked. He remarked that that was something that is starting to become important to him, is to try to sneak into those rankings. And I think that that's going to happen. I think that he matches up well with a lot of the people in that 10 to 15 range. And I think that that's where he goes next. Ponzinibbio, I don't know. Um, I'm not going to say that should retire or anything like that. He had a good showing. He just ran up against somebody who was a little bit quicker to the draw than him, but I think that he'll fight some of those people who are right outside the top 15, just like he just did here, and kind of see where he lands from there. But he is getting up there in age. We'll see how things go for him from here. I don't know if he wants to continue to just stay on the outskirts or if he wants to try to make a push, but we'll see how that works out for him. This one broke my heart. Adrian Yanez against Rob Font. As y'all know, I'm a huge Adrian Yanez fan, and I definitely picked him to knock Rob Font out. I thought that Rob Font was becoming more hittable, as shown in the Cheeto Vera fight, but Rob Font still has that jab, and he fought behind that jab very well. And you could see Adrian, uh, he was touching Rob, and I mean, you could see the visual effects of Yanez touching Rob, and he was hitting him with some good shots. But even through that, because of Rob Font's ability to withstand that punishment, he was still setting things up. And I don't know if Adrian got, if his game plan was thrown off by the way that the jab was coming in. And once you start to get hit and hitting the same spot, hitting the nose, and kind of your game plan kind of shifts. You start to think all kinds of different things, and because of that, he just start catching them with these right hands, and you could see Adrian just start to wilt. And like I said, it was depressing, but I know that Adrian's going to bounce back from that. He's going to be able to get another fight in that 10 to 15 range. That'll make sense, and I look for him to win and just like Saeed, I think that this is going to make him better. This is only his fourth loss, I believe. So he's still a young, hungry phenom, and I think that he's going to still progress up the rankings in due time. But for Rob, this just showed that he is nowhere near done, and he's going to take. I would say he's going to try to fight somebody in the top 5. I don't know who that's going to be, but somebody that will get him closer to the belt before. I mean, maybe even Marab. Marab is looking for somebody. I'm sure that'll fit his timeline. I know he had some injuries. I'm sure he's looking for somebody that'll fit his timeline. If I'm Marab, fine. I'm definitely not fighting back. So there's no Umars in his future. But somebody like a Marab would make sense if the timeline matches up with Marab's injuries and such. But good shit for Rob Font. Yanez will be back. Jorge Masvidal against Gilbert Burns in his swan song. Jorge Masvidal is a legend of the game, a icon at this point, one of the most popular fighters in the UFC. And I'm actually glad that he went out the way that he did. Gilbert fought him primarily on the feet until he felt takedowns were needed. But what we saw in this was exactly what we see in a lot of fighters or a lot of athletes when they're getting closer to the end. Their body is not doing what their mind is telling them to do. So mentally, Jorge was in situations where he would have slipped punches. He would have moved out of the way and been able to counter punches. And he said this leading up to the fight that if he loses to Gilbert, who is a person that he felt wasn't good enough to carry his jockstrap, then he felt like that he needed to hang it up. And what he meant was if his reaction time wasn't good enough to react to the punches that Gilbert was throwing, then he knew that his reaction time wasn't good enough to get that belt. And he didn't want to fight people who were up and coming or fight towards the bottom of the division. He knows that if it's not a situation where he can get a belt or challenge for a belt, he doesn't want to really do that. So shout out to him for recognizing that and not being in a situation like a Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar, when he fought Chris Gutierrez, he knew that he was, coming towards the end. And when he started to get caught and get knocked out, Corey Sandhagen knocked him out, Cheeto Vera knocked him out, and then Chris Gutierrez knocked him out. It's really just ultimately his body betraying him. His body is saying, or not responding to what his brain is telling it to do. It happens to all of us. So this went exactly how a lot of other people thought it would go. I was just kind of hoping and wishing on a prayer that Jorge was going to win. But it's a good win for Gilbert. It doesn't put him in the title picture, I don't believe. But it will give him a nice jump start to fight somebody in the top 5. If he wins that, then you can fight for the title. That's what I think should happen. I'm sure that Gilbert's probably going to be calling out Bilal, or Kobe's already going to be booked to fight Leon, but he's probably still calling him out as well. And I know Bilal showed up to the fights with a Kobe shirt on, and that division is wild, and it's going to be missing Jorge, but it'll still be pretty significant. But hey, that's exactly how people thought it was gonna go, and that's how it went. So the main event of the evening, Israel Adesanya, Alex Pereira, for the 4th time, but really the 3rd time or 2nd time in MMA. This fight, it did feel like a movie. It felt like the ending of a movie. I mean, it felt better than what Creed 3 was. And I think that's just because it was real. And Izzy set it up perfectly by saying that he was player one, and this is the final boss. This is the antagonist in his particular story, and the way that the walkouts were, everything, the whole setup was extremely cinematic, and I was extremely nervous for it. And I think that everybody has those fighters that they're nervous for. And for me, it's Izzy, John Jones, Adrian Yanez, um, Cowboy Cerrone, Uriah Faber, uh, Dustin Poirier. Those are fighters that my heart starts beating out of my chest, and I'm nervous as if I'm going in there and I know I can't control anything. All I can do is yell at the TV. So a lot of people have those type of feelings for particular fighters, and I felt like that for him. I feel like what he said was true. This was his last shot. You don't lose to somebody this many times and get another shot. So at least not this many times in a row. So he knew, and he set it up perfectly. He put a lot of pressure on himself, and the way that he was able to finish this fight by doing the rope-a-dope, by setting him up. A lot of people really debate on whether, oh, he didn't do that on purpose, or, that he's just saying that after the fact. So Luke Thomas actually broke it down beautifully, and you can see in the slow motion, you can see his awareness, his eyes, and the wherewithal to bounce off of the cage, to hit him with that right, and then finish with another follow-up punch. Like, he knew exactly what he was doing. He set that up. And then I believe in Izzy, when he has on his channel, Freestyle Bender, a clip of him actually watching the fight and breaking it down. And they even show him in training doing something very similar. So he knew what he was doing. It's a possibility that it didn't work. So he put himself in harm's way and used himself as bait to be able to close the show. And the celebration afterwards was perfect, perfect. And I knew immediately this makes him an even bigger star than he already was. He was already a star. Now he's a superstar. So where he goes from this is, the world is his oyster at this point. He can do whatever the hell he wants. He can fight whoever the hell he wants. He can pick it. If he wants to go up and fight Jamal Hill, the UFC is more inclined to do that than Yuri. And how can you fault him for it? You got Jan Blachowicz trying to come down to fight him. You got Hamzat going up to try to fight him. Like, everybody's trying to, get the new red painting night at this point. So his star has exploded. For Alex, I think now's the time to go ahead and move to 205 if he wants to, because if he stays at middleweight, he's going to have to fight 2 or 3 guys to get back there and probably beat them in impressive fashion. And he's going to fight guys who will expose him in the wrestling department. So he might want to go up. I think that just makes sense. But the one thing that I will say about this card is I watched this card with, my wife, my brother, and his girl. And so I can kind of judge the fights from the way that his girl reacts. So when she normally comes over, she gets on the couch and she'll cover up in a blanket. And if she's asleep by the co-main event, then I know this card is not exciting. I can't judge by myself. I'm excited for everything. For this one, yeah, she was hyped. She was real hyped for this one. And so that lets me know that for somebody who doesn't follow it as intently and as extensively as I do, even they were supremely entertained by what they saw. An amazing card. So, on to the current talk. And we got some interesting fights that are coming up. Speaking of Hamzat, as I did earlier, Hamzat is scheduled to fight Paulo Costa at UFC 294 at middleweight. So this is the fight that should catapult him into middleweight championship conversation. If he beats Paulo Costa, who's probably ranked number 3, somewhere in that range, then now he's a viable person that could possibly fight Izzy. You tack on his star power, like it's easy to talk yourself into making that a reality if he's able to beat Paulo Costa. Amanda Nunes against Juliana Pena in the trilogy that nobody wanted. And that's going to be UFC 289. I saw the second fight. It was here in Dallas. I saw that in person, and it was pretty one-sided. I didn't really see a point for having a third, but maybe they're just trying to get Juliana out of there. They had a viable person to take that spot in Aldana, and I think that Amanda thought that she was going to fight Aldana. I think that would have made a little bit more sense, but it is what it is. They're going to make their fight, and hopefully Amanda washes her and puts this whole thing to rest. And I don't mean washes her as far as like a 50-44 or 50-45. I mean knocks her ass out or submits her, one of the two. You're going to have to finish her to just be done with this. Bo Nickel is going to fight Tresean Gore at UFC 290, which is shaping up to be a pretty impressive card. Bo Nickel is fighting another step up in competition. Is it a step up? Is Tresean Gore better than Jamie Pickett? I don't know. But I guess it's about a level amount of, or level of competition, about the same level of competition. And he should go through him relatively easy. I haven't seen Tresean really deal well with wrestling, so it should be a similar situation. I look for Bo to be heavily favored in that one. Amanda Hebos against Macy Barber. That should be a pretty dope scrap. I'm a fan of both of them. Macy snuck out of there with a win against Andrea Lee that I don't quite think that she won. And then I think Amanda Hebos, I want to say that she fought Viviane Araújo, I think, and won that one. So they're both coming off wins. I would think that Hebos would be favorite, but we'll see if Macy makes some improvements in her stand-up. Not that her stand-up is bad, but it's setting up some of the things that she wants to do. As far as definitely the power shots that she wants to throw, I wonder if she's going to have some different entries to get in, as opposed to what she did against Andrea Lee. Big one, Alexander Volkanovski against Yair Rodriguez. So they're going to unify those titles at UFC 290, which, like I said, shaping up to be an amazing card. That's one title fight to go along with the Bo Nickel thing that I mentioned earlier. And the next title fight is going to be Brandon Moreno against Alexander Pantoja. So that's 2 title fights. And I think that the third title fight is going to be John Jones against Stipe Miocic. We'll see if that is announced at any time soon. I really hope that is the case. I know that Dana said that he hasn't talked to John. He said that John won the title and just disappeared, which, is his right to do. Hopefully he disappeared and went home and is not out here shooting guns and acting a damn fool. But hopefully that's the fight that we get to top the marquee at International Fight Week. And the last one to mention here, this has nothing to do with MMA, but kind of it does a little bit. Nate Diaz is going to fight Jake Paul on August 5th here in Dallas for the, MVP title for bragging rights. I don't know what they're fighting for. But yeah, that should be a spectacle. In my group chat with my friends, I told them, I love going to the circus. And hopefully I'm able to take the family out to see the circus and see Nate hopefully put a beating on Jake Paul. Hopefully somebody's got to. Another thing that came up, and this was, well, I think it was late last week, was the WWE UFC merger under Endeavor. And a lot of people have been kind of talking back and forth about what does this mean for the UFC and da 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 da. And really, in short, nothing. It means nothing right now. Now, that could change down the line, but, as far as like the interactions between fighters, fighters want to go from one place to another, kind of what Brock and Ronda have done. Brock's gone back and forth. That could be something that could be there, but for the most part, I think that they're going to still operate as total independent entities and just do what they've already been doing, and the same heads that were controlling it before are going to be controlling it now. It's just under a different umbrella. So I don't really think it's anything to necessarily be concerned about. Who gives a shit? So questions going into UFC Fight Night, Holloway versus Allen. So a few important fights in my mind. And again, when I say important fights, I'm not shitting on the rest of the fights. It's just these are the ones that pop out to me. Just my personal preference. So shout out to any of the people that I don't name. I'm sure you're going to do your thing in there, but these are the ones that pop out to me. So initially, at the top of the marquee, and really this fight could have been on, a third fight on a pay-per-view. It's that important. Max Holloway against Arnold Allen. So question is, what are they fighting for and what does the winner get? So I would say what they're fighting for is that top position, and what the winner gets would be different for each one. So if Max wins, what he would get is kind of abstract, because you don't really want to see Max against Alex 4 right now because of how decisive the third fight was. Even though I personally think Max won the second fight, the fact remains is on the judges' scorecards, he lost. So in the history books, he's down 0-3. So there has to be something very definitive to warrant a fourth fight. And as we know, there's only been one time in the UFC that there has been a fourth fight, and those fighters did go back and forth. And of course, I'm talking about Brandon Moreno against Davison Figueiredo. So he would have to do something pretty significant to warrant a fourth fight. So if he does win, I don't see that putting him in title contention. If anything, if he wins, I can see him after that fighting at 155. Because why? Why continue to fight and not really be able to get to the goal that you aspire to? And plus, it'll boost his legacy to get a title at another weight class. So why not? I know he cuts a lot of weight. So for Arnold Allen, if he wins, though, it's plain. He's going to fight the winner of Yair versus Alexander Volkanovski. Easy title challenger to make. This is how you create these number one contender fights. That's an easy ask. So we'll see how that goes. I do still favor Max in this one. I think that Arnold just hasn't been in there with somebody like Max. Not to say that he's going to kind of shell up at it, but I think that Max's ability to wear people down with his volume is gonna get to Arnold. I think that Max, his significant strikes are like 3 times what Arnold Allen does. So it's a lot of output and it's a lot to absorb. So I think that Arnold was going to get overwhelmed. But who knows? I've been wrong recently. So the next fight that stands out to me is the Edson Barboza against Billy Quarantillo. And this one really comes down to, where is Edson Barboza in his career? And does he call it quits after this if he loses? This is a similar situation to what I was saying about Jorge Masvidal, where your body starts to have a lag. You ever been playing like video games online? And this is particularly why I don't play 2K online, is because I'm very particular about my shot. I want my shot to be a certain way. And if the timing isn't right, it's hard for me to compensate for the lag between, my controller and the actual shot itself. And I feel like Edson Barboza may be falling into that same situation where there's a lag between his brain and what his body wants to do, and that ends up getting him caught. A lot of fights that he's previously in, like legendary fights that he's been very close to getting hit, but he understands the range game, and he's able to slip in and out of it just enough to where he can get his shots off, but the person can't connect with him. Well, once you get older, that range and that ability to move in and out, it just kind of goes away. And so we'll see if Billy finishes him. Might be one of them glove in the center moments. I know I keep trying to retire people. I actually thought that Michelle Waterson was going to retire after that loss, but she might still retire though, because she got a lot of other stuff to do, but we'll see. So Pedro Munoz against Chris Gutierrez, who I mentioned earlier. Interesting thing about Pedro Munoz. Pedro Munoz is 2-4-1 in his last 7 fights. That sounds terrible. That sounds like he's been getting his ass whooped. But that's not true. His last 7 fights, 5 of them have been against UFC champions, former UFC champions. So it feels more so like he's in a RDA situation where he's a gatekeeper. He's the litmus test for the division. If you get past him, then you can go to the higher heights and start to fight those killers up at the top, especially in the bantamweight division. I mean, it's stacked 1 through 15 and probably 5 below that. The next one, and this one kind of upsets me a little bit as far as its placement on the card. It's Brandon Royval against Mateus Nicolau. First of all, Mateus has the coldest victory. Like, I don't even know what you call it. It's not a dance. It's a whatever it is. When he wins and he does the samurai sword thing, that shit is dope. The only thing that I've seen that's better is probably what Izzy just did, because but you can't keep doing that. But as far as the actual fight itself, I'm disappointed that it's so low on the card, because this is the number 4 versus the number 5 flyweights in the world. And I know that the flyweight division has been boosted by the rivalry between Moreno and Davis and Figueiredo. But what you do is you're doing the rest of the division a disservice when you have people who are in the top 5 of the division fighting on the prelims of a fight night card. They deserve more than this. They deserve more screen time, more airtime, more publicity, and you have to put them in front of people to see if people are going to gravitate to them. It's counterproductive by putting them this low on the card. That's just not fair to who they are and how hard that they've worked. I think that they should, at the very least, be at the top of the main card on this particular card itself. If not, fighting on, something like a pay-per-view. Like, I would have much rather have seen this particular fight open the pay-per-view than the Raul Rosas fight, because I think that Raul and Christian could have easily been the second or the last card or last fight on the prelims. That'd have been nice. Earn your way. That's a featured prelim card, or even one back from that. Earn your way up there. But UFC does its thing. I'm sure they have a reason behind it, but I don't agree with it. So the next fight, Jillian Robertson against Piqueta, and I don't even know if I'm saying that right, Rodriguez. this is more about Jillian. Jillian has been in the division for quite a while. I think she has the most finishes in the division. She's an amazing grappler. I know she trains under Dean Thomas. They have a really good coach and disciple relationship. But what I wonder about her is when she starts to move up in competition, what happens is very similar to what I was saying about Raul. She starts to get exposed for being one dimensional. And I know that she can strike, but it's the complexities of the striking game. And it's okay, I feel like, to use one discipline to get to the one that you are a specialist in. But I feel like she doesn't necessarily use it to transition to that. Now, if it does transition to the ground game, she's gonna eat you alive, as evidenced of what she did in that grappling competition to Rose Namajunas. I think she rear naked choked her in like 65 seconds. So she's clearly very dominant in that area. But if people know that you're dominant there, they're not gonna let it go there. This is mixed martial arts, and you have to work your way to it. So I'm anxious to see what she's done in that area and how she's evolved and how she's added pieces to her game to get it to the places where she's dominant. So I'm looking for her to win this fight. I think she will win this fight. And the last one that we'll talk about is Jocelyn Edwards against Lucy Pudilova. And really, this one is just about Jocelyn Edwards and her walkout song. Her walkout song is so dope. So she was in Dallas at that Amanda Nunes, Juliana Pena card. And her song, I think it was by Ruben Blades. And it was such a dope song. I had to go and I had to Shazam it or whatever and find it. But her and the blue hair, I think that she's going to win that fight. And what's interesting about her is that she's one of the few females on the roster who probably are true featherweights. And I think that if she was able to string some wins together and her ability to really actually fight a featherweight, maybe they could throw her in the featherweight championship fight to get beat the hell up. So who the hell knows? But that's a way to get some publicity for her if she wants to do that. And who knows? Maybe she'll win. She actually has some really, really good kicks. And the fight that she was in here in Dallas was a really good fight. So, yeah, that's it, man. Great weekend of fights. Great fights coming up. I know that Max and Arnold are going to put on a show in Kansas City. And I look forward to talking about it next week. So, until then, I'll holler at you.